Hi, welcome back if you're returning to watch some of my videos, and welcome if it's your first time here. My name's Christine. I'm a therapist who specializes in neuroscience and schema therapy. And in these videos, I aim to shed light on some of our day-to-day struggles, showing you why we struggle with them and hopefully giving you some tips and suggestions on how to start working through them. So today I want to talk about a topic that I think, or an issue, I think the majority of us struggle with to varying degrees, and that's people pleasing. Now, I do want to make the distinction between people pleasing and kind of genuine, caring, kind, compassionate behavior, because obviously we need more of that in the world. But people pleasing is a different thing. People pleasing is where we do things that we kind of deep down don't want to do. And that can range from saying yes to requests because we feel pressured when we actually don't want to do it. It can be tolerating abusive behavior or comments, or not speaking up when somebody hurts our feelings. It can be not putting in boundaries with people, but it can also be where we are constantly available to everybody else and their problems, and we spend a lot of time trying to fix other people's lives and situations. So I'm just going to give you some examples, what people pleasing looks like, to see if you can recognize, any of your own behaviors in this. I'm also then going to talk about like the impact, the cost to ourselves emotionally, psychologically, and to our health. And then I'm going to talk about why we do it, why it's difficult to stop, and some tips on how you can start working through it. So just giving some examples of people pleasing. And while I'm talking about them, you might want to think yourself, like, do you recognize yourself in this? Are there other things that you do that would probably fall under the people pleasing umbrella? So people pleasing at work, it can look like, you come home from work, but you feel that you need to keep checking your emails. It can be that you stay later than everybody else. It can be that you are constantly doing jobs or tasks at work that other people really should be doing. It can be that people say things to you that you find disrespectful or hurtful, but you don't say anything. You just kind of let it go. Or it could be, in your own family where, people talk to you in a certain way, and that's been the pattern for years, either putting you down or dismissing you or criticizing you, but you just don't say anything about it. It could be a parent, a sibling, a child. It can be that you are constantly doing most of the work in the household, where you don't get time to rest, where your needs for relaxation and doing your own thing are put to the side. In friendships, other relationships, it can look like you're the person that everyone comes to for help and advice. There's always people wanting something from you, that you listen extensively to other people, but you rarely get the same kind of reciprocal treatment. It can look like when you are out in a social environment, social situation, that you're constantly second guessing yourself about what you should say, whether or not it's appropriate, whether you've hurt somebody's feelings, whether you've said the wrong thing, or you're worrying about other people's experiences. Are they okay? Do they feel left out? Or you might be jumping to, save other people from certain situations. So there's a whole range of behavior that would kind of fall under the people pleasing umbrella. So yeah, you might recognize yourself in some of those. I mean, I know myself, I've done, a number of these in the past. So in terms of the emotional, psychological impact, one of the major consequences of people pleasing are the difficult emotions that we have to carry day after day. One is, or a couple, are anger and resentment. When we are constantly pushing down our own needs, when we are constantly not speaking up for ourselves or advocating for ourselves or putting in boundaries, we end up feeling really resentful and angry towards the so-called perpetrators, the ones who are saying these things or putting perceived pressure on us. And when we can't say no, over time, we just start to feel really resentful and angry. And this can lead then to a build-up of intensity of these emotions, and they can just come out in a big outburst. And, to other people who don't know what's really going on inside of us, they don't know we feel pressured or upset or hurt because we don't say anything. They're like, oh my God, where did that come from? You're normally so easygoing and relaxed. And then you just explode. So that's one impact. Another one is rumination. Now, rumination is our propensity to keep replaying something obsessively over and over and over in our mind. So it's usually, conversations that we had where we didn't say something, where somebody said something, we get angry, we start thinking about what we should have said, we get angry with ourselves, and it goes round and round and round without resolution. Also then impacts our sleep, because we can end up 2:00 in the morning with it going around our head. Or in anticipation of a difficult conversation we need to have because somebody is stepping on our boundaries or upsetting us, we constantly, I need to say something, I should say something, we replay it, we practice it, rehearse over and over again, and then we still don't do anything, and then we get angry and resentful. This cycle continues. A second difficult emotion that this generates is anxiety, because if we're constantly worrying about what other people, we've upset other people, or we worrying about conversations that we have to have, or we're worrying about, replaying what we said on a night out or whatever. We've got this constant level of anxiety and stress. And it manifests as just this feeling of unease that we've done something wrong. So this also can keep us up at night. A third consequence of people pleasing is loneliness, actually. And often if we are people pleasers, we have a lot of people in our life. We tend to. And because we're easygoing and easy to get on with. But when we are not expressing a huge part of ourselves, like our needs, our thoughts, our feelings, we feel unseen. We feel like we're wearing a mask. We feel like people don't really know us. And we can't have deep, meaningful, satisfying connections if we are withholding parts of ourselves from the relationship. And sometimes it can also mean that people can't connect with us because we're always like, oh, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. We don't really express our true self for whatever reason. So it affects our relationships. And also in relationships, avoidance of conflict means that, again, we're not expressing when we're upset and hurt, when someone crosses a boundary. So we get angry, and then we can start distancing ourselves from people or shutting people out. Another impact of this is hypervigilance, which is this constant on alert, and it can be like, oh my God, are they going to ask me to do something? Is this person going to want a favor and they won't be able to say no? Are they going to say something? Are they going to talk at me incessantly and not listen to me, but I can't say anything? So we can end up like constantly on alert that, we're going to have to put in a boundary or say something that we don't want to do. So they're just some of the consequences of people pleasing. Health-wise, it's a known fact through research that if we experience chronic stress, and all these emotions activate our stress response, so we live in more of a survival state. And when we're in a survival state, we experience the survival hormones of adrenaline and cortisol, which have long-term impacts on our cardiovascular system. Also in survival states, our immune system becomes compromised and doesn't function so well. And our digestive system also. So we can end up suffering from irritable bowel syndrome, other digestive issues, an ulcer, stomach ulcers, heart issues, and all sorts of illnesses that can come from not having a robust immune system. So I mean, there's more, but that's enough, I think. So you can see the impact of people pleasing is far reaching. So why do we do it? And why is it so hard to stop? So in schema terms, there are three schemas that are responsible for people pleasing primarily. And just to recap, a schema is a pattern that gets laid down in childhood in response to the environment we're in. And these three schemas, subjugation, self-sacrifice, and approval seeking, tend to develop in homes for subjugation, which is the fear of expressing what we really think and feel, because we fear retaliation, conflict, humiliation, rejection. So subjugation develops in a family where if we expressed ourselves, there was some kind of negative reaction, some kind of like maybe abuse or criticism or demeaning or withdrawal. So the brain, the amygdala, comes to associate speaking up with negative consequences. And to the amygdala, when we're young, the amygdala is always looking out for us. It's always trying to keep us alive. And because it believes we live in tribes still, any disapproval from the tribe, any kind of reaction that shows disapproval, over and over and over again, not just one time or two times, but chronic kind of rejection, disapproval. If a caregiver seems irritated or frustrated with us constantly, or we get snapped at, then the amygdala is going, oh my God, I'm in danger. I'm going to be thrown out of the tribe and then I'm going to die. So these schemas are very powerful because they were laid down at a time when, as children, it was a matter of survival. If we don't adapt to, the tribe, if we don't stay in approval, then we could die. So subjugation develops from that. Approval seeking, if we weren't given enough praise, if we were criticized a lot, if we were told we're useless with this, with that, the other, we end up, like trying to get approval so that we can feel safe. And then self-sacrifice, which is the schema where we don't want to upset other people, where we put other people's needs first. It's driven by guilt, and it usually comes from an environment where a parent had a greater need, and we were conditioned to believe that if we were helping somebody else, we were safe, we would get love, we would get approval. So these three schemas, you might want to think your own childhood, where they might have come from, And again, this isn't about blame. This is just about understanding why we do the things that we do. So anyway, the schemas are laid down in childhood, and they center around keeping other people happy with us, like not upset, not angry, not disappointed, not disapproving. That's what they do. And as adults, what actually happens in the brain? So with every schema, there is a trigger. It can be somebody asking you to do something. It could be somebody that says something that hurts you. It could be somebody in great need, again and again and again, wanting help from you. These can be the triggers. When that happens, the amygdala activates an emotional response and thoughts, a story. So if it's, somebody says something that upsets you, you initially feel that, that's not nice. And then the amygdala kicks in. It's like, it flashes up. This is what an emotional flashback is. It flashes up an emotional experience of fear that if you speak up, something bad is going to happen. Don't do it. And this feeling is very powerful. And if you remember from one of my previous videos, when emotional intensity is high, our logical, rational prefrontal cortex gets knocked offline, and we're at the mercy of the emotional brain. And the emotional brain wants us to shut up, suck it up, so that we don't die. So we just find ourselves like almost paralyzed. I can't say anything. And then as time passes, we go home, then get our senses back, our prefrontal cortex comes back online, and we're like, what was all that about? Let's say no. What's wrong with me? So a schema happens like this. A trigger, the amygdala activates an old emotional response to something familiar from the past, somebody upsetting us, and we want to speak up and we can't. There are thoughts which, you might not consciously realize at the time, but thoughts of, oh my God, I can't say anything, they're going to get upset, something bad's going to happen, and we'll lose my job, or they're going to get angry with me and whatever. So there's this fear. And then we just act out the schema behavior part, which is to not speak up. So that's how a schema happens. If people pleasing is driven by self-sacrifice, then it's not necessarily a feeling of fear. It's more a feeling of guilt, or that you're a bad person. So somebody might come to you and say, oh, can you look after my dog while I'm away? And you don't want to look after the dog. So last thing you want to do. But because your amygdala is conditioned to say yes to requests, because it equates saying yes with being approved of and being safe, you feel like a bad person if you don't. The amygdala flashes up this sense of obligation or guilt if you don't do it. So you end up saying, yeah, I'll do it. And then later on, it's like, why did I say yes? I didn't want to do it. It's because the emotional brain is very powerful, and it flashes up these emotional experiences that compel us to act out these old patterns. So how do you start working on it? How do you get rid of this? There's a number of steps you can first start doing. First of all, you want to keep a people-pleasing diary. Anytime you do or say something that you don't want to do, you write it down. You write down what the trigger was. Was it a request? What was happening? And then you try and as you start observing it more and more and more, ask yourself, what am I thinking here? What's the fear? Is there guilt? What am I worried about? What is my amygdala worried is going to happen if I say no? So you just keep a diary, and you start writing the trigger, and then the thoughts. You write also your emotional experience. What are you feeling? And where do you feel it? Are you feeling a tightness in your chest, or do you feel like resentment, or where are you feeling it? So your emotions and the sensations that make up those emotions, just write those down. And then you write what did you actually do? So you start to become aware of this cycle of people pleasing. Then what you want to do is really take a look at your life. Once you've got an idea of the extent of your people pleasing and where it plays out, really start to look at what's the emotional, psychological impact on you because of this pattern. Are there any missed opportunities? Just make a list, because you really want to bring into the present moment how it's impacting you. Then what you want to do, another task which can really help is if you didn't have this pattern, if you could just magic it away, what would your life be like? How would you feel? Write it down. Would you have taken any opportunities? Would you be doing the job that you're doing? Would you be in the relationship? I don't know, how would your life be different? And just by starting this process and becoming aware, you actually start to build up new functions in your brain. And there's one function called mentalizing, which is the ability to take a step back from our experience and observe. And once we can get to that stage, once we can get to the stage where we really see this, and we can bring to mind the emotional consequences, the consequences to our life, we're much more likely to start moving through it. So in that moment, when somebody asks you to do something, like, can you look after my dog for a week while I'm away? You're already primed, with the emotional weight of saying yes to that. You could bring into mind at that time, if I say yes to this, I am saying yes to anxiety, insomnia, anger, resentment, loneliness, health issues, etc., etc. So it becomes much more important to say no. So one of the top 5 regrets that dying, apparently, is that people really wish they'd lived a life true to themselves and not put others first. You don't want to wait that long. You don't want to wait until you're on your deathbed, to start looking at this issue. You can start now. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions about this video, about this topic, or you'd like to share your own experiences of people pleasing and the consequences, or any successful attempts to work through it, it'd be really good to hear.